Hello, it's the Great Canadian Bagel coming to you with the next update to the U.S. Presidential Election Prediction Series. As always, a lot of polls, a lot of chaos, a lot of movement in many directions, up, down, for both candidates. It's pretty chaotic right now. But one thing I can say is that the best case and worst case scenarios are tightening in. Even though my model does not predict the likelihood at all, that does imply, though, that this most likely scenario, which I'm going to draw for you in a minute, is even more likely of a likely scenario. So, let's get to it. Starting with Democrat safe states: California, Hawaii, Maryland, D.C., New York, Vermont, and Massachusetts. That's the same as it's been for a while, and it's probably going to be the same for the rest of the election period. I think, what is this 115 electoral votes? If Trump somehow won any of these states, I would be very shocked, and at that point, polling is just utterly and completely wrong. But, no need to dwell on that. Let's move on to the Republican safe states. We got Utah, Idaho, Wyoming, North and South Dakota, Nebraska at large, Nebraska 1st, Nebraska 3rd, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, Kentucky, and West Virginia. Same deal. Pretty constant. Sometimes a few states jump into this column, like Montana. I think Indiana was in there for a while, but they've bumped down, a bit less safe. Really, not much movement, not much to go on about. Going to Democrat likelies: Washington, Illinois, Delaware, New Jersey, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and Maine's first. Again, no surprises. Republican likelies: Alaska, Montana, Texas, Missouri, Indiana, and South Carolina. Again, no surprises. This has been constant for basically the entire election cycle. I don't think any of these states, except Illinois at one point when it became a lean, none of these states, or in the case of Maine's first electoral district, have really been at play at all, barring some people who wildly optimistic interpretations of some polling, in which case those polls were often likely wrong. Moving to Democrat lean: Oregon, New Mexico, Colorado, Virginia, New Hampshire, and Maine at large. Not captured here. Colorado is much safer than it was. It's a stronger lean. Same with Virginia and New Hampshire. Oregon, obviously, the opposite way. Last week it was likely. Now this week it's only lean. But I think we're starting to see some pretty firm filtering, what states are going to go where. Moving to Republican lean: Arizona, Iowa, Georgia, North Carolina, Florida, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Maine second. We're also seeing some of this here. My model has pretty much consistently been putting Arizona, Iowa, Ohio, North Carolina, Georgia, and Florida in the lean column for a couple weeks now. Pennsylvania, Wisconsin kind of move around a bit. Sometimes they're tilt, sometimes Democrat tilt, sometimes Democrat lean, depending on the week. But overall, this is stabilizing a bit, with exception of Midwest, with Wisconsin and Pennsylvania and the Rust Belt there, which are still in play, I would say. I would be surprised, though, even though polling has Arizona, like the raw polling has Arizona, Florida in Biden's column, I would be surprised if on election day, when all the tallies are in, all the votes are in, that is actually the case. Moving to Democrat tilt: Nebraska second. Moving on to Republican tilt: Nevada and Minnesota. Both of these considerably less safe than last week. And then finally, to peak off the unsatisfactoriness of this, we have Michigan as a toss-up. It is, I believe, 49.7 to 50.3 in the two-party vote. No, it's closer than that, actually. Sorry, it's 49.97 to 50.03. Sorry. So it's really, really close. Again, whenever you see this happen, which has happened several times for Michigan, it comes down to turnout. Who's going to win it? So, I mean, if you want to win, you got to vote. I mean, that's pretty self-explanatory. If you don't bitch to me after the election if my prediction's wrong because you didn't vote in a state that flipped. That's on you, bud. Moving on to best and worst case scenarios. So the best case scenario for Trump, less best. Less bester, worse. Regardless. Illinois, likely state again. Just no surprise. Colorado's nearly a lean. New Mexico's no longer a tilt. And Virginia's now tilt the opposite direction. Tilt Democrat instead of tilt Republican. At this rate, and New Hampshire also is a bit less safe. So at this rate, if we see here, this is 326, this is 305. Assuming Trump picked up Michigan, these two scenarios are almost identical. The only difference at that point would be some margins in New Hampshire. Oh, I guess Nebraska's second too. So this is getting really close to this scenario, which is interesting. Because this scenario projects, if I'm recalling correctly, Biden winning the popular vote by 0.8. And this one has, the best case scenario for Trump has Trump winning popular vote by 2 points. So Trump winning by 2 doesn't really give him much more, which I guess just goes to show the efficiency of Republican votes right now. So moving to the best case scenario for Biden, this got worse, or another way to put it, it got closer to the median, not the median, the most likely result. Nevada's no longer tilt, but Wisconsin and Pennsylvania are tilt. Florida and Arizona are now leans instead of tilts. So there's a few other small changes, but for the most part, it's getting closer to the most likely result. So I'm expecting, going forward, barring any big movement in the last, the election's November 3rd, the last 12 days here, barring any big movement in the next two updates, between the next two updates, I'm not expecting much more changes here. Maybe some like if we go back to the likely scenario, maybe some of these margins might change. Like maybe Nevada might be a tilt or tilt Democrat or maybe lean Republican. But I'm not expecting two color shifts. So like when I say one, like a two color shift would be like Nevada being tilt Republican to likely Republican. I don't think we have any time left for a two color shift on any state. At most, I think that's left is like one color shifts. With a few exceptions, like I could see Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, Virginia, Colorado, Florida having two color shifts, but everything else, one color shift. That's a really weird way to phrase this, but I think we're getting to the point where we're not going to see much. We're not going to see wild movement anymore. Like if you're a Democrat and you're looking at this, you should be worried because at best you can really only pick up 32. There's only 32 electoral votes that are good for you to get, that are easily plausible for you to flip. Obviously, Florida, perpetual swing state, and Wisconsin, Pennsylvania could all be flipped, and that would put Biden over the top. But it's getting less likely. Conversely, if you're Trump and you want to, Republican, and you want to win in a landslide, your options for a landslide are getting harder. like 305, even if with Michigan 321. That's not a landslide to me. That is a comfortable win. A narrow win being less than 300 votes, and a landslide being more than about 350-ish electoral votes. But that's enough speculating at a map. Let us move to graph time. Wow, look. This is what I mean when it's chaos. So, what did we have? So the last video was the 15th, and at that point it had... So on the 12th, we had a huge jump where Biden started leading by 7.4 points, then at 3.2, then 0.5, then 0.3, and that was when the last video was made. Now it's opened up a bit, or since then, he expanded his lead to 0.5, 0.8, then a big jump to 3.7, 3.9, down to 1.3, 0.1, 0.7. So like, it is a lot of fluctuation right now. This is what I mean when I say the most likely scenario has play and has movement in it, but since the best and worst case for both parties are getting tighter and tighter and tighter pretty much every single week at this point, I'm not expecting huge last-minute movement. I think it's perfectly plausible that Biden can win. I think it's perfectly plausible Trump will win. In fact, I'm betting on Trump winning based on this projection. Otherwise, I wouldn't publish the model if I thought the model spit out a rubbish result. But the margins getting tighter, more specific, which means my prediction is going to be firmer, but it also gives me way more room to be wrong. So we'll see. I will just give everyone a note who follows the series. Since obviously we only have like 12 days to the election, I'm going to give my last prediction early. So instead of I'm going to do another one on the 29th, and then I will have one on the 2nd of November. So the day before the election, that will be my final prediction going into it, and that is what I will stake the money on. Not that I'm going to bet any money on an election, because no one I know in real life would want to bet with me. But, and I don't trust betting online. So, that'll be the last day of predictions for this election cycle. And then, probably a week later, on the 9th-ish, I'm not going to put a super firm timeline to give myself some wiggle room. I will, in case, like, for whatever reason, it takes several weeks to get, like, a mail-in ballot sorted out or something like that, and the election result is still up in the air. So I guess I'll phrase it this way. Within a week of the election being confirmed, so either Biden or Trump conceding, finally, or being clear that there's no hope of winning, so, like, let's say, hypothetically, Biden, like, we go back to this, let's say we have this scenario, right, but instead of Pennsylvania and Florida and stuff being leans, so like 5-ish points lead, like let's say Trump won Florida by 30 points or something like that, and it's some weird scenario, or some huge margin that there's no conceivable way Biden could come back, then I might publish it early. But within the week of the election result being known, I'll publish a post-mortem, and I will talk about if my assumptions were good, if where I'm wrong with my assumptions, if my model predicted the wrong outcome. I will walk over, talk about which states I got wrong, and by how much, because I do actually have specific state predictions. And I will also, at some point, this will take a bit longer, I will do a compilation video that will just, obviously there won't be any audio of it, but it'll be like the week-by-week changes of the model for anyone interested in that. But anyways, if you want to stay tuned to figure out my final prediction, please subscribe. That's the best way to keep informed. Otherwise, if you like my commentary, you like my model, I don't know, please also subscribe. If you like the video, like the video, and comment below if you want to talk about the pros and cons of my model, where you think there's going to be potential for error, where you think the most likely divergence on election days, like and by that I mean like where you think the biggest last-minute movement might be, the state that's the most uncertain, other than Florida, because Florida is the perpetual swing state of swing states. Actually, maybe not this year, but given its track record, I'm not putting too much on any anecdotal evidence saying it's not going to be very swingy. Even though there's plenty of anecdotal evidence either way that it might not be very swingy this year. But otherwise, I hope you all have a good day, and the best.